was conceived.
Yeah, that's where I was going.
Jedi Jesus.
Now, they've retconned this in the comic books. In the Marvel comic series of Star Wars, they've retconned it to say Palpatine somehow manipulated the midichlorians and the Force and used it to create this being, which I think he...
Nah, he fucked her.
Welcome, everybody, to the Geek Seat with Ben Kliewer. My name is Ben Kliewer. I will be your host. Joining me in the seat today for our very first episode is Detective Artimus.
What's up, dude? How's it going? We've been talking about this for a while, and here we are.
We finally made
loaded.
it.
Yep. A few hiccups in the way. I'm a little sweaty, but I am ready to... He's
sweaty and ready today.
The rhyme was right there, and I couldn't even think of it. Thank you.
It's okay. It's okay, Detective. Do I refer to you as Detective or Artimus?
Detective,
or both?
Artimus, Boppy, whatever you want to say.
Boppy?
Boppy, like daddy.
Oh, Boppy. I thought you said Boppy, like with a B.
No. I don't know what that is.
I don't know what that is either. Aye, Boppy. Okay, so I'm really excited because this is actually our first episode that we are shooting. We've been talking about this for a year?
At least a year, man. It's been a year. It started off as a simple idea and then, just things happen, but we're here now.
And I'm so excited. We are coming to you from the Neft Vodka studio in El Segundo, California. Thank you so much, by the way, to the Neft offices for letting us use this studio. Really grateful to you guys for that.
Drink responsibly.
Drink responsibly. Always drink responsibly.
Unless if your parents aren't there. But you didn't hear that from me. I
think the concept of drinking responsibly stems from don't hurt yourself.
Well, we did our part. Give them the warning, so it's on them.
Mentally, spiritually, all those types of things. And since today is our first episode of the Geek Seat with Ben Kliewer, I just thought it appropriate that we cover one of the greatest first episodes we've ever seen, arguably. Today we're talking about Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace.
Dun, dun, dun.
Technically, the first episode, as it is called Episode 1. So Episode 1 of the Geek Seat, Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Let's jump in and talk about it.
Let's do it. So I remember watching it, not in theaters, but when it eventually kind of came to TV. I wasn't really a Star Wars fan until maybe about when they re-released it in theaters, like in '97.
Okay.
Like I knew Star Wars, I knew the toys were really cool, but at the time I was just so balls deep in Batman. That probably came out wrong. I was so far into Batman, that sounded even worse. I was a huge Batman fan as a kid, so it was pretty much him and Spider-Man, and then I was like, okay, I'll give Star Wars a try. And I remember the first scene was in Empire where Luke is on Dagobah. That whole scene, and I couldn't look away. So when Episode 1 came out, I was super excited for it. And looking back as a kid, it was really fun. And then adult, it's okay. I think it's okay.
It's okay. Yeah, that could not be more different from my story. I grew up. Now I credit my older brother Chris with my nerdiness across the board. He's the one who first showed me Star Wars. He was still I don't know if he's going to kill me for saying this in a podcast, but he was still playing with Transformer toys and that sort of thing when he was like 14, 15, 16 years old. And just because he loved it. And he first introduced me to Star Wars. He's the first, he first showed me the 1989 Batman, and he would like fast forward through some of the parts because I was like 5 years old at the time.
Right.
But Star Wars, he knew that he could just show me. And so when I was super young, probably maybe 3, we had a VCR, he had the videotapes and he showed me all those. And then once I got to the age where I could like actually run the VCR on my own,
right,
I was wearing those tapes out. You know what I'm saying? And so then, all through the 90s, loved Star Wars. That was my jam. Of course, Power Rangers, Batman, all these other types of things. And we will cover that in ensuing episodes of the Geek Seat.
It's inevitable.
Get me wrong. We have lots of plans for this show, so we're gonna keep you entertained. And then, of course, 1997, Special Edition came out, re-released in the theaters with all the quote-unquote improvements that George Lucas made to the series. And I remember being a little kid, early 90s, when my brother's showing me, and he like was losing his mind because he's like, and Ben, you see that? You see that at the beginning? It says episode 4. That means there's 3 episodes that happened before this. And that means that George Lucas is going to make more, like he was a teenager at the time, you know? And so he's like flipping out. That got me excited. This is years before they even announced it.
Right.
And then, you know, somewhere around I think around when they were releasing the special editions in 97, or maybe just before or after that, that's when Lucas came out and is like, I'm writing episodes 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, I think they started filming it around 97, like summer of 97. I remember reading that. One of my favorite things about The Phantom Menace, though, is the soundtrack.
Of course, the soundtrack, because you're pulling one of the greatest movie composers of all time, John Williams, back into this universe, and he's got so much room to play with new themes and, you know, story themes to match musical themes too.
Right.
And he's so brilliant at that. But I feel like you were going to say something about that.
I was, but I want to save, hold on for a little bit later. But what I really wanted to say was that I still have nightmares of 1997, you know, freaking Jabba the Hutt on his horrible CGI at the time.
Oh, yeah, when they threw his scene back into A New Hope.
Yeah, where they made him from a human into, you know, a hut.
Right.
And like you see Han Solo just like walking on top of his tail and stuff, doing a loop around him.
Well, that was actually a huge, you know what? We're going to need to do an episode on the special edition original
I think
trilogy.
you're right, man.
Because there's so much to talk about there, and we've got to get into episode 1. So let's fast forward 1999. I am 14 years old. I turned 15 that summer, but May 19th, 1999 is a date that will be burned into my memory until the day I die.
Let's hear it.
And I went as a 14-year-old in rural Kansas. I saw Star Wars Episode 1 in the theater 9 times.
Holy shit.
9 times. I couldn't drive, mind you. So I had to make one of my parents at the time, whichever one was free on that particular day, drive me into the next town to go to the movie, to go to our shitty little movie theater in rural Kansas to go see Star Wars Episode 1 9 times in late May, early June of 1999.
Now, did they get better after every viewing?
I don't think I cared. I think that's the thing. I was just so stoked on having more Star Wars. And even before that, like, I got a subscription. I paid my own money for a subscription to the Star Wars Insider magazine.
Oh, shit. Okay.
For like a year and a half before the movie came out. So I was getting all the details. I remember reading about a new character named Darth Maul who was going to have a double-bladed lightsaber.
Yeah.
And I had no clue what a double-bladed lightsaber was. I was like imagining it having like 2 blades coming off the same side or something. Like, there were no pictures, so I had no idea. One thing I want to talk about is our first introduction to this new storyline of Star Wars. And that is the classic, the opening crawl. So I go into the theater, I'm a kid. It's, it opens up the black screen, the blue lettering a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Boom, Star Wars, the John Williams theme starts playing. It's familiar. I love it. I am just vibrating out of my body at this point. And I don't think, I'm glued to this opening crawl because I'm like, what is about to happen? The opening crawl is important. The opening crawl is important.
Even the Fox Studios, like a little intro right before.
Oh, yeah,
too.
Absolutely.
Every time I hear those, like, dun, 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 dun.
Oh, fantastic. So, opening crawl, Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. We knew all this already. Boom. Turmoil has engulfed the Galactic Republic. Boom. We're in the middle of it already. I love this. So excited. The Galactic Republic, obviously pre-Empire. This is the government before the Empire takes over. Very exciting. Next line of the opening crawl. The taxation of trade routes to outlying star systems is in dispute.
Very political.
What? Are you kidding me? Like, you look at the original trilogy, it's just action throughout the whole thing.
So much adventure in it.
And now now we're talking about the taxation of trade routes to outlying... What?
Yeah. Did you take a drink every time they asked Queen Amidala to sign the treaty?
No, because I would be dead right now if I had
signed the treaty.
So, okay, taxation of trade routes is in dispute. Okay, hoping to resolve the matter with a blockade of deadly battleships, the greedy Trade Federation. Okay, I was up to you until Trade Federation. I was up there until then. Has stopped all shipping to the small planet of Naboo. What? Like, okay. Hoping to resolve the matter with a blockade of deadly battleships. Star Wars. Absolutely. 100% Star Wars. The greedy. Yes. Okay. Villain. Here we go.
Got it.
Trade Federation has stopped all shipping to the small planet.
The Trade Federation. Watch out.
They're not getting their Kroger products. That's essentially what's happening here. Okay. So we're on a roller coaster at this point. We're swinging back and forth while the Congress of the Republic endlessly debates this alarming chain of events. Seriously? Okay. The Supreme Chancellor has secretly dispatched 2 Jedi Knights. Okay, here we go. Jedi Knights.
They said the words.
The guardians of peace and justice in the galaxy to settle the conflict. So we end on a high note. 2 Jedi Knights have been dispatched, which is a fun word if you're looking for action, right? To settle this conflict of a shipping blockade.
It was all about trades and politics. I know there's a lot of, political influence in Star Wars movies, but this one just felt like it was the most. And you look back at A New Hope, it was just a straight up classic, coming of age adventure movie. And this one, because of its political views, it was just so slow and so disinteresting. I mean, especially if you're a kid, you're like, I don't want to see these dudes talking about treaties, some fucking lightsabers.
Right. And the thing is with the original trilogy, particularly with A New Hope, there was the political presence there, but it was all exterior.
Right.
They mention it in their meetings on the Death Star, the Imperial Senate, this, blah, blah, blah. But it's a side note of like, that's going on over there, but here's where the action is.
Exactly.
Now, there is one point that to be made here is that George Lucas definitely wanted this series to be more of a politically driven trilogy than the original trilogy was. In fact, George Lucas had ideas of making this almost a completely different franchise. Like, it's the same story, it's leading into the original trilogy, but he wanted the movies to look different, to feel different, to be different, essentially in every way possible that he could. And obviously, he owned ILM. He had been wanting to make these types of visual effects since he made the original Star Wars. Like, that's what was in his brain.
Yeah.
And he got a little high on the hog. Obviously, we all know this now.
It's all green screen.
It's it was so. I'm actually impressed because right after that opening crawl, we are introduced to some of the most cartoonishly and comically, culturally offensive characters, the Nemoidians.
Viceroy.
The Viceroy, Newt Gunray, and his whoever else, the other Nemoidians on this battleship, as they call it, that's blockading the planet. Now, listen, like, people think Disney used to be bad, but if you look at the Nemoidians in this, and you look at Watto, who shows up later, we've got some serious, like, George, listen, I love and respect George Lucas. He has created one of the most magnificent franchises, one of the most magnificent things in human history. But the Nemoidians, obviously, it's been talked about to death. Very much a caricature of classic Hollywood cinema Asian stereotyping. Watto, very much an example of classic Hollywood cinema Jewish stereotyping. None of these things are acceptable. One thing I will say that did impress me is with the Nemoidians, they were practical effects characters.
Yeah, and they still look good.
They looked great because they were practical effects. And that's the one thing I will say works in the Nemoidians' favor, was that they were practical effects.
Yeah, they look pretty good. Have a nice little presence to them. But then the moment they opened their mouth, you're like, oh, God damn it. Here we go. This is what happens when you give George Lucas way too much creative control. He wrote the thing, he directed it, he produced it. So it was all him. So whenever anything bad happens, he would have to take the fall for these. And you know, no matter how bad these prequels were, like Ben mentioned, that he gave us Star Wars in the first place. So I mean, I think that's better than any shitty movie he does, you know, subsequently.
Right. Well, and I think the thing is, there's, and this is something I've said in the past, and this goes off onto a little tangent, so I'll keep it in a nutshell.
Nutshell,
exactly. The thing is, the original trilogy I love. Is it perfect? I think technically probably not, but to me it is, right? The, you know, New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, perfect trilogy. Solid. To me. The prequels had a lot of really great story with really bad execution.
Exactly, and that's the best way to say it.
And the sequels had really great execution and really bad story.
They were just making it up as they went along. The biggest missed opportunity in cinema.
And I think the thing is, we don't have time to break down everything in the entire film. Like with that would just be a 9-hour podcast, and we just can't do that. So let's talk about high points and low points. I think the first high point for me is, you know, we see the aforementioned Jedi who have been brought to this ship. At first, the first few shots of them, they've got their hoods down, they're coming in, and then they walk into they're led into the meeting room by the protocol droid, and they walk in, and then you know, that's when they take off their hoods and reveal themselves to be Liam Neeson and Ewan McGregor as Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi. And first of all, may I say, and this is nothing that has not been covered, I'm not breaking new ground here, but the casting of Ewan McGregor as young Obi-Wan Kenobi is just phenomenal.
Legendary.
One of the most brilliant casting.
Hello there.
Hello there. One of the best casting choices that I think I've ever seen as a fan of any franchise.
Definitely one of the best things about the entire prequel trilogy is Ewan McGregor.
Absolutely. The only thing is, now I'm looking at this, I'm watching this movie to research for our show, and they walk in, they take off their hoods, you know, they kind of reveal their full wardrobe, and I'm like, why are these guys dressed like desert hermits? Like, and this has also been discussed online and in other platforms, but it's like, why are the Jedi, okay, we can say, okay, the Jedi are monks, or they're part of this religious order, so they're wearing this, you know, the like very
brown,
drab clothing that's not really attention getting. But if that's the case, why in the hell was Obi-Wan Kenobi still wearing that shit in the desert on Tatooine when he was trying to hide from the Empire? And then why also were the Sand People wearing practically the same thing? So you know, in my humble opinion, I would have thought, okay, maybe the Jedi could be dressed a little bit more like, I don't know, Luke Skywalker in Return of the Jedi. All black.
Yeah.
But like very well cut, not like a dark robe like the Emperor. He's clearly evil. But like maybe a black, well cut uniform of some sort. Maybe that's what the Jedi could have been wearing instead of desert hermit garb. That's all I'm saying.
True. Maybe not black though, because, you know, often black dark colors represent like a villain in a movie.
Sure.
So maybe a gray or navy blue.
Something like that. Something besides
bright orange, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah,
but not brown.
Something besides desert hermit wear. You know, like they're guardians of peace and justice throughout the galaxy. They obviously have a central role. They are a religious cult, for lack of a better term, but you know,
I mean, obviously we know a lot about fashion, so that's why we're just kind of jumping on them right now. And speaking of their like first appearance in the movie, there's a part where they're escaping, and then they use the force speed to say, you know, bolt out of there really fast, right? Now, when they're fighting Darth Maul in the end, why did Obi-Wan not do that to catch it in time? Instead, he just kind of, you know, sprinted a little bit over, then he missed it. If he would have used that force speed in the beginning, maybe, just maybe, Qui-Gon would still be alive.
Well, and I knew you were going to bring this up, though, Artimus. I knew you were going to bring this up.
Don't call me detective for nothing, and by they I mean me.
Well, and that's nice. Well, and that's the thing, though. So if we're jumping forward in the movie, the Duel of the Fates, the dark side won the Duel of the Fates, by the way, because ultimately ultimately Qui-Gon Jinn is what Anakin needed to actually become a great Jedi. And because of that loss, the task fell to Obi-Wan Kenobi, who, while great, perhaps did not have the same wisdom or the same thought process as Qui-Gon Jinn, who would have been able to guide Anakin in a different way. But that's neither here nor there, because that's dealing with what ifs.
You can be on what ifs all day.
So yeah, so we've got the Jedi are running up. They're trying to get into, first of all, cool lightsaber action.
Yes, I will give them that for sure.
So we've got our first taste of modern lightsaber action in 1999. Apart from, essentially, there were 3 lightsabers in the original trilogy. Yeah. There was Anakin's that then Luke used. There was Vader's red saber. Then in Empire Strikes Back, he loses the saber. Somehow it magically gets found in the sequels. Whatever.
Another day.
Another day. And then Luke's new lightsaber, the green lightsaber that he builds.
My favorite.
Which is dope. And obviously the hilt modeled off of Obi-Wan Kenobi's lightsaber. I'm sorry, there are 4 lightsabers. There's Obi-Wan Kenobi's lightsaber as well. And so now all of a sudden, boom, we've got 2 lightsabers. One of them is Obi-Wan Kenobi's, but the other one is Qui-Gon Jinn's. Green, totally awesome. He's shoving it through a blast door, melting the door. Like, this is stuff we've wanted to see.
Exactly. Stuff we imagine, like, how a lightsaber will work, and now they're actually doing it. Like, oh, crap. Like, that's actually possible. It's cool to see it in a movie now.
Yeah, and they're running through. They're slicing droids up, and then we've got the droidekas, the destroyer droids that come rolling in. They've got
little force fields on them.
Yeah, force field generators. And so they're bouncing, blaster bolts back at them. That's when they use what you were talking about, the force speed. They jump out, right?
Yeah.
Now, again, this is a plot hole that we're looking at. Obviously,
I never noticed until I rewatched it recently. I'm like, what the hell, George?
Right. So that's a little bit of a. Did they need to use force speed right there to get away from the droidekas?
Probably not, but it was pretty damn cool.
It was cool, hell yeah. But it also opens up to this whole debate about, like, oh, maybe Qui-Gon Jinn didn't have to die.
And they used it like twice in the movie.
What was the other part they used it in?
A little bit further in, where they're, I don't remember the exact scene, but it was another time soon after they do it the first time.
Huh. Okay.
So I'm like, okay, first time maybe, but they did it twice, and that's not cool with me. It doesn't fly. Another one, I don't mean to jump at the end again, but when fucking Obi-Wan is hanging right there and Darth Maul is just kind of like throwing some little sparks at him, his lightsaber was already broken. He could have just dropped on Obi-Wan's face.
Right.
But no. So Darth Maul got what he deserved.
Well, you see, he's sadistic. He's a dark side user.
He was throwing sparks at him.
Yeah, he's torturing him, man.
Not good, Darth Maul. You were the coolest thing about the fucking prequels. Excuse me.
That's one of the biggest downsides for me is, and approaching, listen, George Lucas, great filmmaker, he wrote and directed A New Hope. And then he was wise enough to realize, hey, I need somebody else to direct and write this, and I'll do the story and produce for Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. Great idea, George. Like, you are the ideas man. You have created this whole thing. This is amazing. Let somebody else take the reins and George Lucas is a director. He knows how to direct. You look at THX 1138. You look at the stuff he's done before this. American Graffiti. Great films. No doubt at all. But I think one of the wisest things he did was say, I'm gonna oversee all this, pass the baton on to somebody else for directing and writing for Empire Strikes Back. And of course, going through the 80s, the Indiana Jones movies and Labyrinth and Dark Crystal and all this kind of stuff that he was involved with, great experience for him. But I think the thing is, he became so great and so powerful.
Too much power.
That more star systems began to slip through his fingers. And by the time he got to this and he said, I want to write and direct all 3 of the prequels, and to focus on episode 1, it's like, man, didn't you see what worked in the past?
Right.
Be the big story guy.
Exactly. And let someone else kind of execute them. And that's just, it's just one of those things where you, on paper, like it sounds good that the creator is in charge of, the lore he's established.
Right.
But it just, too much time has passed. And I thought he was just one of those, like, it was just out of touch. Like he peaked.
Well, he got it to the point of what Jeff Goldblum talks about in Jurassic Park, where he's like, you became so concerned of whether or not you could, you never stopped to think about whether or not you should.
Great
because
movie.
At this point, George Lucas could literally do anything he wanted and put it on the screen. And I wouldn't trust myself with that.
It's way too much to carry.
It's way too much to carry. And he was just like throwing it around like a kid with watercolors. and we got this monstrosity of a film, which is in some ways is really great, but there was just so much of the execution was off. I love the political intrigue. I love adding that into the storyline of Star Wars. The pod race, incredible, absolutely incredible addition to the Star Wars universe. Incredible to watch just as a film goer. The Duel of the Fates lightsaber battle.
The best thing about it.
One of the greatest lightsaber fights in the history of any Star Wars on screen,
Right.
But some of the other stuff, like, God bless Jake Lloyd. Listen, this poor kid.
From Jingle All the Way.
Listen, Jingle All the Way, great family Christmas film, right?
Yeah.
Like, wonderful, lovely film. Schwarzenegger.
Sinbad.
And Sinbad, Jake Lloyd. And then you throw this kid in, you're like, you're going to be the face of the entire Star Wars franchise for the next 2.5 years. And
all the bullying he got, it was horrible. And then
yeah, absolutely.
And then as irony would have it, he got like a DUI later for drunk driving. It's like, what happened to your pod racing skills, man? Just saying.
God. Anyway,
but we're not here to to roast on George Lucas or Jake Lloyd. We're here to talk about the Phantom Menace. And what do you think about Jar Jar Binks?
Nice redirect there, detective. Okay, guys. So, like, George Lucas is famous for saying with Jar Jar Binks, he wanted to create a character that kids could connect with or that kids would love in the series. He said it would be similar to Chewbacca. Kids loved Chewbacca in the original trilogy, right? And I don't understand how you take the concept of kids really like Chewbacca and end up with a character like Jar Jar Binks. Again, somewhat offensive, although Ahmed Best, who again, another actor who suffered bullying online and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, was driven to the brink of suicide at one point. Thank God did not go through with it or was not successful with that. And because, again, people like him and Hayden Christensen, again, outside of the episode 1 context, who have received so much hate over the years, in more recent years have been widely accepted and given the love they deserve, I think, coming back to the Star Wars franchise, coming back to Star Wars celebrations and conventions and stuff like that. But the character of Jar Jar Binks, it wasn't even here. The thing is, it wasn't even backwards talk like Yoda, which was kind of charming and interesting in its own way, in a Muppet type of way. This was just mushmouth speak. Like, it was just misa yusa blah 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 blah. And I watched it with the subtitles on. And it's even funnier watching it with the subtitles on because they try to write it as he's saying it. And the spellings of some of this, if you get the chance, watch Star Wars Episode 1 with subtitles and read it every time Jar Jar Binks is speaking. And it's so funny to read how they tried to spell out what he was saying, but it was absolutely ridiculous. And I don't think it connected. I mean, maybe it connected with kids. It definitely didn't connect with me as a 14-year-old, but that's...
How rude.
Right. How rude. Which he says multiple times.
Add that to the drinking game.
Yeah, take a drink every time. No, take a shot every time Jar Jar says how would, because I don't think it's that many times.
Like 5, maybe.
But it's like, that's directly lifted from Full House. And it just seems, to my notion, it seems so out of place in a Star Wars film to have a character like this. Like, you could have absolutely had Jar Jar Binks and the Gungans in this movie if you just backed off on it a little bit. The crazy kooky talk and like just trying to make him these weird, like it's like he leaned into caricaturism for so many of the characters in this movie.
Right, a little too cartoony.
Yeah.
There's Star Wars is a fun movie, fun franchise, but there's also a lot of seriousness to it. And then when you put too much, comedy in there, then it just kind of, it loses the impact.
And the comedy oftentimes came from the dryness. Like you look back at the original trilogy, you look at Han Solo and some of these comments he makes, they're absolutely hysterical, but they're delivered so dry, in Harrison Ford's way.
Yeah.
They're so dry. And that's where a lot of the comedy comes from. It's not this goofy slapstick.
Exactly. There's a lot of slapstick in there.
Yeah. Sure, in the original trilogy, there's some slapsticky kind of stuff, but Jar Jar Binks, they land on Tatooine, they go into the town, and immediately he just steps in poop. Which...
It's a good metaphor for this fucking movie.
Right. It's funny, but is it a Star Wars movie funny? Like...
maybe Star Wars could use more poop in their movies.
I don't think so.
Yeah,
I don't think we need more poop
why
in the Star
not?
Wars
It's got to be better than the fucking sequels, at least,
Oh, man. Where is there poop in the original trilogy? Is there any poop in the original trilogy? Maybe in the Rancor pit.
Yeah.
Maybe. But other than that, like, somebody doesn't step in poop and go, "Oh, icky poo." Like, what? It drives me nuts. And
now, I'm going to ask you, though. I'm going to ask you a question. Do you think Jar Jar was a Sith Lord?
It's one of my favorite theories. I think they could have retconned it in the sequels if they wanted to.
It would have been all worth it if he was a Sith the whole time.
But I don't think theoretically in the canon that we have today, I don't think it holds water. I think it's one of the funniest theories out there.
Yeah.
But I don't think, in canon, I don't think Jar Jar Binks was a Sith Lord. And you can soundbite me on that. Let's talk pod racing, because I think this is one of the greatest gifts that George Lucas gave us, particularly with the prequels, and is one of the highest points of Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Because it's so cool. In fact, I will always quote from the Kevin Smith series, Clerks the Cartoon.
Love it.
When they
all 6 episodes.
All 6 episodes of it, when there's an episode where Jay sues Dante and Randall from the Quick Stop. And so his lawyer just starts pulling in... Randall starts pulling in all these random people, basically movie producers, to try to get his money back for seeing terrible movies. And one of them, he calls George Lucas to the stand and, accuses him of all these things, of writing the, Episode 1 over a weekend and all this kind of stuff. And the opposing lawyer does say, "Your Honor, I object. The pod race was pretty cool." And that's true.
It's very true.
And they recently did kind of another version of pod racing on an episode of The Bad Batch. And it was still really cool. And I think that's one of these universe building things. Like, that has nothing to do with Jedi. It's got nothing to do with the Empire. This is just culture in the Star Wars universe. People love pod racing. It's relatable to us who like to watch sports or NASCAR or whatever other kind of like competitive entertainment that we like to watch. And I feel like that's why, one, obviously the visual effects were amazing on it, but two, the suspense of a competitive race action sequence in the middle of this Star Wars movie in the flavor of the Star Wars universe was so cool. Detective Artimus, tell me about what you think about the pod racing.
Well, for one, George Lucas was a big fan of racing. In fact, I think he actually had into a little car accident of his own. But that sort of love for racing inspired what we got in the pod racing sequence. And I think it was really cool, a lot of good fast pace. And they also mentioned that Anakin is able to do it, because he has, the the high midichlorian count.
He's the only human that can do it.
Right. So that's why he's able to, make the quick turns and stuff. And I thought it was really cool. I watched it recently. I still think it's probably maybe the second best part in the movie aside from the final lightsaber scene.
Mm-hmm.
But I would love to see more of it, and you can make it more high stakes, more tension, not too, crazy like, Fast and Furious, but I still think it could be a lot of fun.
I think they need to bring back pod racing.
Absolutely.
There needs to be like, if that's the next like Disney Plus show is just centered around
just pure pod racing,
like a group of pod racers, and like the, of course the drama that goes on between them and that sort of thing. And of course, like you said, it doesn't have to be Fast and Furious or something like that, but you can still tell a good story of the relationships between these people or folks or aliens or whatever, and then have all this awesome pod racing action. I don't know how cost prohibitive it would be, but
I mean, it could be like 6 episodes, whatever. Nothing too crazy. But what if they did a Talladega Nights approach with pod racing? That'd be pretty cool.
Like a comedy, like a grounded comedy, though.
Shake and bake.
I think that's the thing, though, with when we were talking about Jar Jar Binks, it's like the comedy in the original trilogy was funny, but it was grounded in the universe.
Right. It was them reacting to things, not making, their own like situation.
Yeah. They didn't just throw a goofy ass character in there and say, this is funny, you should laugh at it. I think that's the problem I have with Jar Jar Binks. It was so blatantly in your face of like, here's the goofy character you're supposed to laugh at.
He was at that applause sign.
Yeah.
And like in like live studios.
But back to pod racing.
Yes.
You didn't need an applause sign for the pod racing.
That shit was cool.
That shit was cool. And the thing is, and we'll get into the midichlorians here in a little bit, but Anakin, there's the whole dinner scene where they're in Anakin and Shmi. No. Yeah, Shmi. Shmi's home. I keep confusing Shmi and Sheev, which is Palpatine's first name. Oh. Shmi Skywalker, right, is Anakin's mother. And there's the whole like
how he was conceived.
Yeah, that's where I was going.
Jedi Jesus.
Now, they've retconned this in the comic books. In the Marvel comic series of Star Wars, they've retconned it to say Palpatine somehow manipulated the midichlorians and the Force and used it to create this being, which I think he...
Nah, he fucked her.
It was a Roman soldier. Anyway, but the whole thing, like, if we're looking at this purely from the perspective of we have just seen this movie in 1999 and we're like, oh, it's an immaculate birth, it just made me think, Jesus Christ, literally. And although essentially becoming the Antichrist in some ways in the Star Wars universe, but the whole midichlorian thing, because then Qui-Gon is reporting back and he's saying, oh, it's even possible he was conceived by the midichlorians. The concept of the midichlorians, I feel like it cheapens the idea of the Force being this kind of mystical, because in Empire Strikes Back, Yoda says the Force, in A New Hope, even Obi-Wan Kenobi says it surrounds us, it penetrates us, it binds the galaxy together. It's an energy force. It's not microscopic organisms living in your bloodstream.
Right. And it takes away the mystique of what the Force is. And now you have midichlorian count, which, gives it a scientific edge. Like you can actually calculate how much Force you have in you. And that sucks because it takes away the mystique, any sort of imagination that a powerful, Force wielder would have, because you can actually measure it. So that is pretty lame.
It subtracts from the mysticism of the story, which I think is a key component to what George based this whole storyline off of in the first place, which is like the hero's journey, the power of myth, that whole thing, the Joseph Campbell kind of point of what George Lucas created this out of in the first place. And then to say, oh, it's just, I think they did it on Robot Chicken. Like Darth Vader and Luke are drinking coffee and Vader's like explaining everything to him. And he's like,
oh yeah. Okay. I remember.
Oh yeah. The Force. That's just microscopic. That's just microscopic organisms that live in your bloodstream. And Luke is like, and it's actually Mark Hamill doing the voice. Yeah. He's like, look, if you're not going to take this seriously, I'm going to leave.
It was either Mark Hamill or Bob Bergen who would typically do the Luke Skywalker voice work in the games.
Right. No, I think that for Robot Chicken,
for sure Mark
Robot Chicken, though, that was actually Mark Hamill who did that, because Mark Hamill what a gift to humanity, by the way. Let's just take a second to appreciate Mark Hamill. Yeah, the whole midichlorian concept just really cheapens the concept of the Force.
Exactly.
To my notion, to put a scientific measurement on it really takes a lot of the mysticism away from the idea of the Jedi and using the Force, which, again, talking outside of school or outside of what we're particularly covering here, I thought was really nice at the end of The Last Jedi when they kind of acknowledged that, oh, anybody out there might be able to use the Force.
That was the only thing I liked about The Last Jedi.
We'll have a discussion on that. We'll do another episode on The Last Jedi.
I'm always ready to converse about that.
But yeah, again, I just feel like it cheapens the idea of the Force to throw in the midichlorians. That being said, going back to pod racing, Anakin Skywalker, the only human that can do it. Obviously, that means other species don't need the Force to be able to pod race because they have different reflexes and that sort of thing, which is why we see all the other racers being alien, Sebulba, the Dug, which another scene where George Lucas just spoon-fed us so much in this film where, you know, Jar Jar Binks, again, being stupid slapstick comedy, flings some sort of dead animal from a wet market at Sebulba, hits him in the face. Sebulba comes up and is like, 9, Juba 9. You know, he's like talking to him in Huddies
He's
or
talking
whatever.
shit to him, yeah.
And then Anakin comes up and, like I said, spoon feeds us the information. Your friend picked a fight with a Dug, a particularly nasty Dug named Sebulba, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like,
no shit.
Dude, why? The original trilogy, everything in the universe just existed. And you watched the movie and just accepted that this was all part of the universe. And it felt so much in the prequels like Lucas was just trying to spoon feed us like, here's a new thing I came up with. Here it is, and everything you need to know about it. We didn't freaking know who Boba Fett was when The Empire Strikes Back came out. We had to read it in a magazine. Not that I was alive. It came out 4 years before I was born. But, you know, there are all these things like all these characters that we had no idea who they were or what they were until we read Star Wars Insider or some kind of publication, because they just existed in the universe and we didn't need them to be explained to us in the movie at that moment.
Right.
And that was one of the biggest faults. I felt like Lucas just over explained everything in particularly in the Phantom Menace, but across the prequels, just over explained everything and told us every little detail about everything we needed to know when we didn't need to know it. You know,
less is more.
We just needed to watch the movie and accept what was happening because it was the Star Wars universe. And then if you really want to dig into it, you can read about it later. You know, like I said, Star Wars Insider or a novelization or anything online, because by 1999 we had the Force.
AOL, yeah,
we had the Force.net. You know, we had all these online places we could go.
Are there still .nets out there?
We should make this the geekseat.net. That should be our website.
Fuck it.
.usa.net. I don't know what I'm talking about. So suffice to say, pod race scene, though, incredible. Now, if we're going to talk about another high point, and we've mentioned it a few times, the Duel of the Fates. The title of the music, or the movement, the piece that the brilliant John Williams, who's almost 100 years old now, by the way.
He is a national treasure for sure.
He's in his 90s, and we are going to lose him at some point in the next decade, if not less, and that is going to be absolutely heartbreaking, and I will be inconsolable.
I'm already crying thinking about it. Don't look at me.
Right? I hate to bring that up, but that's, you know, the fact that we've had him this long blows my mind.
The moment Darth Maul takes out that second blade and you hear the Duel of Fate trumpets going out, you can feel it in your chest, and I still get goosebumps from watching it, and how perfect it is, how much it elevates the scene, and just, you know, gushing over it.
As stupid as so much of this movie is, that fight scene was incredible. The story leading up to it, Darth Maul just coming out of nowhere, and again, I acknowledge, I just said we don't need to be spoon-fed everything, but there's some aspects of like Darth Maul just showing up where I'm like, we could have had a little bit more backstory on, but it's not as big of an issue for me as some of the other stuff.
Right.
But they're in the launch bay with the Naboo N1 starfighters. The docking bay doors open or whatever.
Yep.
And Darth Maul's standing there in his robe. Bum-ba, Duel of the Fates starts playing. Like you said, he disrobes. That sounded dirty. He takes his outer robe off.
I'm okay with that.
Takes his outer robe off. Flings out this big stick, which we've only seen him use one lightsaber.
Yeah.
And we're like, why is that lightsaber handle so long? Why is the hilt so big? And then boom, the second side comes out. Holy crap. Mind blown.
Something we've never seen before at that point in Star Wars.
Absolutely. We've seen, like I said, we've seen up to this point 5 total lightsabers, right?
Yeah.
Like we've seen Obi-Wan's, Anakin's in the original trilogy, and Darth Vader's, and then Luke's lightsaber. And then we've seen Obi-Wan's, which is the same lightsaber as the original trilogy, essentially. And then Qui-Gon Jinn's. Those are all the lightsabers we've seen. We've seen 5 total lightsabers in history up to this point.
Yep.
All of a sudden, boom, Darth Maul comes out, double-bladed lightsaber. He's flinging it around. Ray Park, by the way, incredible in this film. They dubbed over his voice, which is, I guess that's a choice. You know, they needed him to sound
A little more menacing.
a little more, exactly.
Pun intended.
Like a Phantom Menace. And I think he's a Kiwi. I want to say he's New Zealand.
He's from Australia. He's from Perth.
Is he from Perth? Okay. I apologize. I know that's a touchy subject.
Let me fact check before I get killed in the comments.
Between Australians and New Zealanders, they're very proud people. I am very proud of them both. Where's he from?
Well, we couldn't be any more wrong. He is from Scotland.
Oh my gosh, I am an idiot.
I'm gonna die. That's fine. I loved it.
Ray Park. He's from Scotland?
According to this website called Wikipedia. I could have sworn he was like from Australia, but I guess not.
Huh.
You know what? He's from a different country, and we'll just leave it at that.
No, that's too American of a response. He's from somewhere else. He's not from around here.
Some geek over there.
Some guy. So he's from Scotland. But anyway, Ray Park, incredible martial artist.
Yes.
Incredible stunt performer.
Exactly.
And I just think it's hilarious. You drop this guy and they're like, okay, Liam Neeson, like heralded actor Liam Neeson and young heralded actor Ewan McGregor. We're going to throw you in this fight scene with an experienced stunt performer and martial artist. Good luck. But it's, obviously they had extensive training, extensive rehearsals with Ray Park.
Apparently during the choreographing, like when they were rehearsing it, Ian McGregor would make lightsaber sounds, and he did it so much that they actually had to tell him to stop making those sounds.
How could you not, though? Like,
I would probably lose my job if that was me, because I'm gonna keep making those lightsaber sounds. I do when I go pee. I do it everywhere.
Like he was just in there like wom wom. You do it when you go pee?
Never mind about that.
Anyway, but he was in there like wom wom. I can't blame him. Do you? Can you?
No.
But again, despite the fact this was done almost entirely in front of blue screens or green screens, and just the visual effects were out the wazoo because, again, George Lucas didn't stop to think of whether or not he could. He just thought about, or whether or not he should. He just thought about whether or not he could. Produced, I think it's the focus on the acrobatics, the martial arts, the choreography of it that made it such a great thing, because we did not get that in the original trilogy.
Right, because before that we had Obi-Wan and Darth Vader having that very slow spin, do.
Well, you had
it was just so much more limited because they didn't really know at the time what any lightsaber duel would look like or what it could be, and now they established they can be really intense. They're just so much better, and it's unfair to really compare them to the original lightsaber duels.
Oh, absolutely not. No, but because at that point they're just like, they're like, oh, and it's a sword made out of a laser, and so just fight with it, right? like there was some choreography there. There was some like swordplay kind of, theory injected into it.
Right.
But this was something completely brand new in 1977 or 76, whenever they were filming it. And so we've literally had 32 years, to develop this idea of what a lightsaber fight should be. And on top of that, to say, okay, now we're in the middle of this religious order whose whole deal is fighting with lightsabers. And so it needs to look impressive. And so, yeah, it makes sense that, Luke didn't have anybody train him on lightsabers. Maybe Yoda did, but we didn't see it.
It's very, very limited training. According to, I think it was Shadows of the Empire, he went to Obi-Wan's hut and he found his journal, and that's how he learned about the, not mind trick, but some of the stuff he did in when he went to Jabba's palace.
Right.
Like the choke and stuff. He learned all that from Obi-Wan's journal, but that's non-canon, so who cares?
Well, Shadows of the Empire, there are rumors that this is a topic for another. We should do a Shadows of the Empire episode, by the way.
I love that game. I love the book. Because
that was a whole other thing. Prequels, that was a whole other sack of potatoes that they were trying to make happen. And did a good part of what they intended to do. But we'll do another episode on that. But yeah, so we just didn't have this idea of what a lightsaber fight could be. And I think they had all this time to think about it leading up to a prequel. We're in the middle of this religious order that focuses on lightsaber battle. How should this look? And they knocked it out of the park. And again,
out of the Ray Park?
Out of the Ray Park, Waka Waka. We'll be here all week, folks. And of course, then layering on top of that great John Williams score just made it incredible.
Just elevated it.
And again, coming to this idea of the loss of the hero, the loss of the father figure, paralleling A New Hope in the loss of Obi-Wan Kenobi. But this time it wasn't by choice, as it was kind of with Obi-Wan Kenobi. Like, he decided to give up. This was Darth Maul killing Qui-Gon Jinn in front of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Of course, we already discussed not being able to use the force speed for whatever reason because of the necessity of having these weird interlocking laser grids.
I don't know what purpose they served. What was it for? I don't know.
It's like looking at Star Trek when they had to like go through the bowels of the ship and go through like these obstacle courses.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
What?
It's crazy.
What's the purpose of all this? Like, why would you have this in a ship?
It's terrible. Yeah, I hate Star Trek. I don't know what you're talking about.
I love Star Trek, and we will be doing Star Trek episodes as well.
Speaking of Star Trek and Phantom Menace, we gotta talk about Fanboys. Have you ever seen Fanboys?
Fanboys,
dude,
yes.
It was one of the coolest movies I've seen. Good cast, and the last line of the movie.
What
if it sucks?
Yes, I was about to say that because I was gonna be like the final line of that movie. What if it sucks?
Yeah, they did all this just for a shitty movie. So that movie is great, and I think we had to mention it at least, once during this episode.
We should do an episode on Fanboys as well, I think.
Yeah.
We're just generating ideas while like I said, this is episode 1 of the Geek Seat. So
we're going to just throw whatever sticks in the wall.
By the way, if you are watching us online or any place where you can comment, please throw your ideas in the comments below for what episodes you would like to hear us discuss and any guests that you would like us to have on the show. I will always be here, but or generally I think I will, but Detective Artimus won't necessarily be here every time with me.
Unless you want me to.
Unless you want
me to. I mean, I've been on this channel for years now, but it is nice to have a new face on board. So
I love being here. And by the way, thank you.
Of course, yeah. I'm not paying you, so it works out for me.
Yeah. I'm actually paying you.
There we go.
I'll Venmo you later. So yes, then we have the ending. They're burning Qui-Gon Jinn's body.
Barbecuing his ass, yeah.
Which of course is reminiscent of the pyre for Darth Vader in Return of the Jedi, which again, quick side note, one of my favorite parts of the sequels was bringing back the melted Darth Vader helmet. I just thought that was absolutely awesome and brilliant.
It was.
It was.
That's it,
To a certain point.
Wait, I'm sorry. Going back to how lightsaber duels are now perceived it's sad that the prequels still have the best lightsaber sequences.
True.
The sequels did nothing. It was just a quick motions, and like it was no substance to it, and it was very short. And another reason why I despise that trilogy.
There was very little reason for the lightsabers in the sequel trilogy, but we'll cover that in another episode. What I would say is one of the best lightsaber battles, though, very similarly, is in the Disney Plus series Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah.
The final lightsaber battle between Darth Vader and Obi-Wan Kenobi.
That was great.
Fucking incredible.
You see like his mask split open.
Oh, yeah.
It was visually like really cool. And the symbolism, it was great.
Absolutely. But yeah, so, popping down to the end because we need to wrap up this episode. We don't want people listening to a 3-hour podcast unless that's what you want to do, in which case you're weird.
You're a masochist.
Burning burning Qui-Gon Jinn's body on the pyre, and then Yoda and Mace Windu discussing always two there are of a Sith. Right. Well, we killed one.
There's always a bigger fish.
There's always a bigger fish. Another line from this movie, which was a weird scene as well.
I like
the whole
scene.
Gungan City thing, and it was again like George Lucas being like, look at all these things I can create. And we had all these we had 3 different weird underwater fish, I guess fish.
Creatures, monsters. This makes me afraid of the water even more.
Yeah.
What the fuck's down there?
Well, not if you have a bongo.
Ooh, there's that, yeah.
No, they did get.
I guess I'm gonna leave you with this question. Watching it then and watching it now, how different is it? Where is your perception? And did it get better? Did it get worse? Do you hate it? Do you love it? Or is it still
I think for me, because it had such a huge impact on me, again, as a 14-year-old boy, going on 15 and being this legend that I had been, it was this prophecy that had been foretold to me. When my brother pointed out to me, look, it says episode 4 at the beginning of A New Hope. And at that point, I took it as gospel. I took it as prophecy. There is a coming of the first 3 episodes that I am now waiting for with bated breath. And so, again, May 19, 1999, a date that will be burned in my memory until I die or I get Alzheimer's. And even then, it might still be burned into my memory. And so, looking at this and going back and watching it, it's not a great movie. There are some wonderful, great, awesome things about it, but it will always be important to me. It will always be special to me. I will be able to quote all the lines along with it as I watch it. Am I going to watch it a whole lot? Probably not, but I'll probably watch it more than I'll watch The Rise of Skywalker.
Going back to your Alzheimer's comment, if you do happen to get it, at least you'll always have new Star Wars content.
It's true. I'll be able to go back and enjoy it all over again.
There you go.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in to the Geek Seat. Detective Artimus, as my guest tonight, is there anything that you would like to leave off? That's the wrong thing. Let me start that over.
You can ask me the question I asked you. That'd be nice. I have opinions, all right?
No.
Damn it.
Thank you so much for tuning into the show tonight. And Detective Artimus, let me tennis ball volley this question back at you.
Let's do it.
How do you feel now going back and watching it? Is it better? Is it worse? Is it the same? What are your thoughts on 1999 Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace?
As a whole, it's definitely not better because as a kid, you have those goggles on and everything is perfect. Everything is cool. But as an adult, I guess I can be an adult. It's very boring. The pacing is off. The whole political aspect of it is a little too much. All I really wanted was some kick-ass lightsaber duels and some sweet John Williams music, and that's kind of it. But I got all this extra stuff. So as a whole, it's still okay. I would probably rank it above Attack of the Clones, but below Revenge of the Sith. So I'm going to count the sequels, but it'll be 5th. Out of 6. Out of Sith, I should say.
Wow. That was really low-hanging fruit. Detective Artimus, thank you so much for being on the show with me today. Thank you so much for the opportunity to come in and be on your channel and do a show.
No problem. Welcome to the Movie Melee family. And by family, it's just me at this point.
Just you.
It's just me.
Now,
everyone left me.
But now we are a clan of two.
Yep, it takes two to make a thing go right.
It takes two.
I think that was I think that was Shakespeare.
I believe so.
So if you have any other requests for us to do, let us know in the comments down below. Please make sure that subscribe button, hit that notification button so you don't miss any of our award-winning content.
Award-winning. We are award-wanting content. Again, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ben Kliewer. This is the Geek Seat. We are on Movie Melee, the Movie Melee Network, I should say.
Sure, yeah.
And thank you so much. And have a wonderful night, geeks.
Until next time, friends.